I promised you 5 original episodes this week, and by God, I'm gonna do it.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and I am now finished up my 5th full season as a host on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. And if you're going to post on a comment, either here on YouTube or if you're listening to us just on audio, whether you're going to follow us on Twitter or whatever the heck it's called now, you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Also, make sure to use the hashtag EverydaySully because I want to know who's listening every single day. Okay, I think we've covered all the bases. Oh, wait, there's one thing I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention that today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case provided with personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat up to 50 or even more than 50 infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE Medical.com. Wow, I could use something from Jase Medical because I've been sick as a dog this week. I had to miss a day. And the other day, if you were watching, we had a great show talking with the brand new host of Locked On A's, Mr. Wayne Coy. We had a really nice discussion of which I was coughing more than Jim Leland in the 9th inning of a playoff game, sneaking smokes in the dugout. I was hacking, and did I mention hacking? If I lived in New Jersey, I'd be in Hackensack. But I'm doing a little better now. Your pal Sully's a little bit better now, and I'm I had a little bronchial infection that was causing a lot of. But hey, I said 5. Here we go. Let's do the trivia question first. I let the trivia question linger for a little bit, which was Mike Trout, greatest Angel of all time. But he is not the all-time Angels hit leader. Who is the all-time Angels hit leader? We got a couple of people, including Motion was taken. I don't know. I'm sorry, sometimes I can't follow them. You said Tim Salmon. That's incorrect. John Murphy Jr. got it correct. The answer is Garrett Anderson. And the only thing that Garrett Anderson really has had over Mike Trout this time is time. Because if Mike Trout stays relatively healthy, he will probably be the all-time Angel leader in every category. But as of this recording, Garrett Anderson is still the all-time hits leader. We're doing a live stream today. I see some people are already watching us here. We got a comment. Hey, John Murphy Jr. Look at that. Speak of the devil, John Murphy Jr. Good afternoon, Sully. Hey, good afternoon to you, John Murphy Jr. You got the question right. Good work. You know your stuff. I got to get my I got to get a tournament of champions and do a trivia thing because I got a lot of episodes to fill this off season. Let's talk about something. I alluded to it a couple of days ago, but I wanted to cover a couple of things, including the situation with the A's, and we'll talk a little bit more about the A's later because we discussed something during our Locked On A's crossover, which I think is going to come to fruition in that if you think the A's have stadium problems now, they may not have any stadium very soon, which is, look I don't always plan wonderfully, but I always like to make sure that if I am going to, move, that I have some place to move to. Like, let's say I'm going to go to Australia. And my buddy Mose F., who's in the chat room, and says, "Good day from Australia." Good day, mate. The land that gave us Graham Lloyd and a couple other players. If I were to move to Perth or Melbourne or Sydney or some other Australian city that I don't think I can name right off the top of my head right now, I would make sure I was moving to a place. And it looks like, as we'll cover in one of the segments, it looks like the A's may have forgotten that. But I did want to give a tribute, every year. For those of you who are new followers of the show and new followers of me, every year I do, I do an in memoriam video. And for people who have died since the last opening day, I do it just before the season begins. And it's become a very emotional thing, because it's always I'm intentionally trying to pull your heartstrings. And if you follow me on Twitter, whatever the hell it's called now, my pinned tweet at the top at Sully Baseball, the pinned tweet is the previous in memoriam video. Well, someone who's definitely going to be in the next one is Peter Seidler, the former owner of the San Diego Padres. And he was also, and I didn't know this until I read his obituary, he is the grandson of former Dodgers owner Walter O'Malley. I didn't know that, to pull a Dana Carvey's Carson. But so he comes from a tradition of baseball ownership. Now, whether or not you like the O'Malley family depends on whether or not you live in Brooklyn or Los Angeles. But he's died. He was not he was in his early 60s, I believe. He was 63 years old. He's not an old man. And he took over control of the San Diego Padres just after the COVID season, which the Padres were a playoff team. They were part of the expanded playoffs in the COVID year. And that was also the year they wound up beating their arch nemesis in the postseason, the St. Louis Cardinals, and went on to get whumped by Los Angeles in the division series of the COVID year. Peter Seidler, I think probably his health was not great over the last few years, and which leads sort of retroactively an understanding of his sense of urgency as an owner for the Padres. The Padres started spending money like Richard Pryor and Brewster's Millions. How about that for a reference for Gen Xers? And he treated the free agent market like it was supermarket sweep, picking up some, outbidding people like for Xander Bogaerts and Yu Darvish, and shockingly for Manny Machado. Although Machado was before his arrival, so I have to be a little bit fair there. I can't give him credit for that one. But the Padres became big spenders with an eye on winning a World Series, which the Padres have never done. The only time the Padres have ever won the World Series was in the 1980 made-for-TV movie, The Kid from Left Field, with Gary Coleman and Robert Guillaume. I reference that film way too much. I will, by the way, John Murphy Jr. Says Brewster's Millions, good movie. John Murphy Jr., you get me a lot more than your dad did. But the Padres became a team that big-time free agents signed with, and of course they made big-time trades. The bringing in Juan Soto, one of the big superstars in baseball, in his prime, cost the Padres a bunch of good, solid young players, and they're like, to hell with it. The future is right freaking now. And as we're now learning, we found out that Peter Seidler probably knew that his future wasn't going to be that long. And he wanted to leave a Padres championship. And it was kind of odd and refreshing. And this is coming from someone who was a native New Englander, an unrepentant Red Sox fan who lived in New York for a long time, that one of the big spenders and big bullies in the offseason was in San Diego. And alas, it was a fun time that may be coming to an end. Now, I don't think the Padres, who, by the way, finished only 2 games behind the eventual National League champion Arizona Diamondbacks, I don't think the Padres are going to go back to being a 100-loss team. I don't think this is a Flowers from Algernon situation. But I do think that they are going to break up a lot of this team that they can. Obviously, Juan Soto is a tradable player. It does look like they'll probably be able to trade Machado or Bogaerts unless they eat a lot of their salary and get some of them to waive some no-trade clauses. But Soto is going to be a tremendous trade chip that should bring back terrific players, especially with some teams hungry to win a title. It is easy to look at Seidler's wild spending spree and push to make the Padres a champion and label that as coming short. I bet some people would call it a failure. He wanted to do that, it didn't work out. But I will make an argument in the upcoming segment that what he did was a smashing success, and that there are other ways to gauge success other than flags waving. And Seidler did exactly that. And I bet the numbers are going to prove it. Hey, let's talk a little bit about our friends at Jase Medical. You hear my voice? Do you hear that? Do you know what that is? I'll tell you exactly what that is. That's called an infection. Your pal Sully had an infection in his throat, which meant there was an entire day I couldn't talk, much to the delight of some people in my life, but hard to do a podcast that way. And you know what I needed to have? I needed to have antibiotics. Okay? I need to have antibiotics which are going to help me get better. And I'm using them. But what if I was cut off from my doctors and my regular chain supply and I couldn't get to my medication? What if you're in a situation like that? You're covered, my friend, and you don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your medication, because all this is possible because of your friends at Jase Medical. Go online right now at jasemedical.com and receive a 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer has said this about Jase. I'm thankful for the service. Supply chain issues has caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I've ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and I highly recommend this for everybody. If you or someone you love would like to get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. That's Jase Medical, JASE medical.com. Welcome back here. Someone else put something in the comment before we get to my point here. Mo's in Australia is telling me that it's 6 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia. And he says, if you're having, and I'll post what he says, if you're having baseball withdrawals, check out the Australian League. Melbourne Aces stream their games here on YouTube. You might recognize Greg Bird at first. Wow, Greg Bird. There's a Greg Bird sighting. Greg Bird looked like he was going to be part of the new Yankee run, and he was their first baseman who helped homer. He homered in that series against Cleveland, that shocking victory that the Yankees had in 2017. Let's talk a little bit about the positive thing that Peter Seidler did do. The Padres were pretty good in the mid-2000s. They made back-to-back trips to the postseason, albeit one year they finished 82-80, and actually technically finished the year with a losing record because they got swept by St. Louis in the division series, so they went 82-83 if you include the postseason. They had home field advantage in the division series in 2006, but once again got their face punched in by the St. Louis Cardinals. And then it looked like they were going to win the West in 2007 when suddenly they fell back and ended the season with a tie for the wild card with the Colorado Rockies, who went on that amazing September run. The Padres were only a game or so behind the eventual division champion Arizona Diamondbacks. So they basically had a swing of, if they won two more games in 2007, they would have had home field advantage throughout the National League playoffs. Instead, they had to play a wild card game on the road. And as it happened, the Rockies won that game. They contended in 2010. And then it was basically a decade of nothingness. They were non-contenders in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And along the way, they saw the Giants go to the World Series 3 times, winning all 3 times. They saw the Dodgers winning a couple of pennants. They saw the Diamondbacks getting back to the postseason a couple of times. And they saw the Rockies get back to the postseason in back-to-back years. And the Padres were irrelevant. They also saw the San Diego Chargers leave town. Once again, cementing my thoughts that San Diego is Buffalo by the sea. The pain of being a San Diego fan is critically underrated, partly because they play in beautiful San Diego. So it's tough to have people go, oh, poor San Diego, when you're living in one of the most beautiful cities in the country. But in a way, that gives me more sympathy for them because they can't even beg for the sympathy that Cleveland fans or Cub fans used to do, or Red Sox fans used to do, or Buffalo fans will always do. It's tough to get sympathy when you're lamenting your team's loss and you're not shoveling your driveway, but instead you're surfing. But again, it shows you that the Padres fans have it rough. And imagine using the rule of 7. The rule of 7, for those of you new to the show, is my theory that you don't really start following a baseball team or any sporting team until you're around 7 years old. And think about it, your first concrete memories of a team are when you're about 7 or 8 years old. And so you are a teenager in San Diego with no fun memories of the Padres. No, the Padres are just a team that plays there. And they're the only game in town now. And they stink. And worst of all, they're irrelevant. So, look it. Fact of the matter is this. Seidler came in and started spending money. He put his money back into the team in one of the best stadiums in baseball, but in a market where he could absolutely scream poverty. To the west, he has the ocean. To the east, he has a desert. To the south, he has Mexico. And to the north, he has Los Angeles and Anaheim. It's a boxed in fan base. Now, yes, Mexico is a great untapped market in terms of baseball enthusiasm and everything like that. But again, tough to compete with the Dodgers. And he could cry foul more than the A's could, more than Tampa Bay could, without having the excuse of, oh, you got to build us a new ballpark. He didn't. He reinvested the money into the team. He probably overinvested, but do you know what? The results were, if you are a teenage fan now of San Diego, you finally have memories. You finally have a reason to go to the game. For at least for a couple of years, you could go to San Diego and expect to see good baseball. You got to see the first no-hitter that I predicted. You got to see superstars. You got to see Tatis come back and start playing great baseball. And you saw the team be aggressive. Manager's not right, we'll bring in Bob Melvin. We need a big star, we'll bring in Xander Bogaerts. Need another big star, we'll trade for Juan Soto. We need good pitching, we'll bring in Yu Darvish. All these things come together with this team. And the results were, for at least a few years, if you're in San Diego, it was fun to go to a Padres game. And here's the deal. People went to the Padres. People absolutely went to Padres games. You don't believe me? What are 2 of the 3 seasons that the Padres had their greatest attendance in their history? In case you're wondering what the answer is, it would be 2022 and 2023. The Padres, previous to those 2 years, the biggest year they ever had in their attendance was the year that Petco Park opened, 2004, where they drew 3 million fans. Then, but the Padres drew 2,987,000 fans in 2022, which makes me grumble that really you couldn't find 13,000 extra fans. Just 13,000 extra fans show up for one day, and they would have pushed over to 3 million. Well, don't worry, because 2023 was the most attended year in the history of the San Diego Padres. They drew 3.2 million fans, which means they averaged over 3 million fans the last couple of years. in San Diego while getting their team to within 3 wins of the World Series, which means in terms of their postseason runs, it was their third best year in their entire history. And part of the purpose of what a baseball team owes its fans is a summer. It doesn't necessarily owe the team a championship. It doesn't. But what it owes its team, what it owes its fan base is a summer, is a fun summer. By the way, in 2021, they drew over 2 million fans, FYI. This is the lowly Padres who can't draw anything. And, that was a team that, was a postseason team up until they collapsed in September. But for the last few years, last year was not good. We all saw that. But the fans were there, and fans got to go to this great stadium and have some memories. It's not always about the championships. It's not always about the titles. For the first time in a generation, there was a reason to be a Padre fan. And obviously the goal was to win a title, and they didn't. But for that young fan in their early 20s whose memories of the 06 playoffs are vague at best, they finally had a reason to cheer for the Padres. And that was Peter Seidler's doing. If they tear this team apart, there's not much I can do. Not much any of us can do. But at least for a while, the Padres were the team and a fun team. Hey, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, let's wrap up today here. The White Sox looks like they're going to be in full rebuild. Remember a couple of years ago, starting with the COVID year and in 2021, it looks like the White Sox were going to be not only, contenders in a very winnable division, but have a core of players. The Abreus, the Andersons, the Moncadas of the world were going to be, the Giolitos of the world were going to be part of this core team that was going to go to the AL Central year in and year out, and maybe one year it all clicks together. And they contended for most of 2021. I'm convinced if La Russa was not the manager, they may have won 2 or 3 more games. They probably would have been still in it going into Labor Day. And from that moment, they've been nothing short of a disaster. Again, strike while the iron's hot, because you don't know. That looked like it was going to be a 5 or 6 year window of opportunity for the Chicago White Sox. It looked like they were doing everything right in their rebuild, and suddenly the rug got pulled out from underneath them. They wound up making a big trade when they dealt Bummer for about 4 or 5 players. It was actually it was a 6-player deal. Excuse my cough there. One of the players the White Sox got back was Michael Soraka, who was an all-star for the Braves a few years ago and has had nothing but injuries. In fact, he's only pitched in 10 games since being on the 2019 All-Star team. So, yikes. Just once again, hit the iron while it's hot. You have no idea how long your window of opportunity is going to be. It looks like the Brewers might also be disbanding. They non-tendered Brandon Woodruff. Someone give me my Jase case. Brandon Woodruff has been non-tendered. He's probably not going to pitch next year, or if he does, he will be it'll be at the tail end of the year. But this was a guy who was a really solid all-star caliber starter. And if you have a long-term plan, or if you're thinking like, we're not going to win next year, but next year we're going to be in good shape, taking a 2-year fly on Woodruff isn't the worst thing you could do if you're, say, the Mets, because if he could come back and be a good pitcher coming back, that's like you're making an acquisition for 2025. It's going to be sad to see the Brewers tear the team apart, but it brings the question, because I don't think the Cardinals are that good right now. I mean, are the Cubs, are they just opening up the division for the Cubs? I don't know. Neither do you. Finally, as we were talking about the other day with Locked On A's, where the hell are the A's going to play in 2025? Their lease only takes them to 2024 in Oakland. And if they're going to scram, if I were the city of Oakland, I'd say scram. You don't get to, what are you going to do? Do a year for year lease? No, so you can play here. Sign a 20-year lease. There's nowhere to play in Las Vegas. They don't have a stadium yet. Are you going to play outdoors in a minor league stadium in 118 degrees in Las Vegas? It's looking like that might be the answer. Or like, well, maybe we'll share the football stadium. First of all, they don't make multi-purpose stadiums anymore. They make football stadiums for football, baseball stadiums for baseball. This isn't like hockey and basketball where you can just use the same arena. And in case you forgot, the Raiders hate the A's. They hate them. If the Davis, the owner of the Raiders, saw Fisher, the owner of the A's, on fire, and Davis was holding a glass of water, he'd drink the water. So no, I don't think they're getting bailed out there. You would think this would have been the first thing they okay, if it's 2025, we're going to know where we're going to play. This is insane. The owners voted for it. Haven't played 2 years in Montreal. See how it will work. It's potential catastrophe. And if you thought the Expo situation was bad in 2004, at least they had a lousy stadium to play in, and there was another lousy stadium in Washington for them to move right into. So we're going to see. It's a potential disaster. Hey, those of you who are watching the video, you probably see there's a new addition to my background here. That's the picture of Turkey Stearns, who is a Hall of Famer, beloved player from the Negro Leagues. And he is going to be the topic of a show on Turkey Day, and also this book about him as well called Hall of Fame DNA by Vanessa Ivy Rose, who is the granddaughter of Turkey Stearns, who's been on this show before. She's a friend of the podcast. We're to be talking about her grandpa and the fantastic new podcast that she's done through ABC News, which is absolutely worth taking a listen to. We're going to message all about that on social media. Before we wrap up, let's first of all check to see if there's any more comments in the comment section. John Murphy says, I feel bad for athletics fans in Oakland. I feel horrible for them. Absolutely do. Absolutely do. And another one was about, from Maz, was Tim Anderson's downfall getting knocked out by Jose Ramirez. I don't think so. I think that's overrated. I just think there was a decline in his skills, which sometimes happens. Trivia question today. The San Diego Padres have not won the World Series. In fact, they've only won one World Series game in their history. Here's the question. Who is the winning pitcher of the only World Series game the San Diego Padres ever won? Put that down on YouTube or on Twitter, whatever it's called now. Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully with Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Fighting it through and giving you 5 this week and lamenting the loss of an owner who did what we would want all of our owners to do, which is go for it. This is Locked On MLB for the 18th day of November, 2023. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.